Hello there and welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. Glad you're with us. We're here every week meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues, and we're having a guest back today who's been on here many times but always brings some great information and can always inspire us about what's ahead in college athletics.
Well, not only what's ahead in college athletics, but what you can do with your life in even busy positions. Joe Castiglione is coming back for a 12th time. He's going to tell us about what's going on at OU athletics, and he's going to tell us what's going on in his life. He recently achieved a master's degree in education, and he's an adjunct professor at the School of Education, among other things.
Right, and people are looking forward to this upcoming academic year, and especially the college football season. We'll get Joe Castiglione's perspective. A lot going on in college athletics. It's all coming up today on The Verdict.
How do we create a better world of energy? The answer is obviously not foreign oil. Wind and solar need decades of development, and we've set the bar higher for the environment than coal can achieve. So the answer? American natural gas. It strengthens our economy, reduces pollution, and protects the environment. Learn more at chk.com. Chesapeake, America's champion of natural gas.
There's no waiting at the St. Anthony ER.
No waiting.
Announcing the end of ER waiting at St. Anthony Hospital. Go to saintsok.com and reserve your time online.
Why didn't we think of that?
Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Once again, we welcome back an old friend, Joe Castiglione, the athletic director at the University of Oklahoma. You're familiar with his background, I trust. A couple of things I do want to mention, that he's been the athletic director at Oklahoma since 1998 for 12 years. A lot's been going on during that time period. He's received many honors from his peers and from the world of athletics, but also he's been working hard outside that. As I mentioned in the open, he obtained his master's in 2007, master's degree in education from the University of Oklahoma, and now serves as an adjunct professor in the College of Education. During his tenure, the University of Oklahoma has won 7 national championships and approximately 50 conference championships, quite a record in a short period of time. But welcome back. We're just glad to see you again.
Good to be with you both, sort of like a reunion once or twice a year.
It is good to have you back, Joe, and we're going to get, I think, a little bit later to talk about the wonderful success that you had in the last academic year across the board. There were some great success stories. But a lot of the off-season attention here in football is focused on conference realignment, and you've been right in the center of that. At some points, it seems like you've been one of those that held the Big 12 together, and now the Big 12 seems like it's in a very enviable position. You've had an opportunity to kind of sort through it all, but it has to have been crazy for you and your cohorts at other schools.
Well, Mick, it really was, probably because it happened in such a compressed time frame. It wasn't the fact that conference realignment, expansion that sort of talk was out there nationally. What was it, probably late last fall, maybe even December, when the Big Ten announced they were going to look at expansion. And soon after that, one, even two of our conference teams made the statement that, you know, they would keep their options open, essentially. Maybe didn't use those words, but essentially what that meant. And when that happened, it started this sort of feeling that the Big 12 was vulnerable. And it was ridiculous, because the Big 12, over the 14-year period it's been in existence, has proven over and over again that it was very, very strong. Look at the teams in our conference that have competed for and won national championships. Look at the strength of our programs across the board. If you want to talk about the way we've been able to monetize that value and generate revenue to support those programs, again, very strong. So this idea of vulnerability was ridiculous. And yet it started going and going, and the perception took over. And then, you know, over the last several months, the first part of this year, talk grew. The Pac-10 conference had a new commissioner. They were going to look at expansion. They made that announcement, and there you have it. You had a lot of talk out there. And at the end of May, 1st of June, we had a conference meeting, and we tried to address this internally and tried to get our schools, you know, to make sure that they're committed. And one thing led to another, and one of the conferences decided to accelerate the time frame, invited Nebraska. Nebraska accepted, and then the Pac-10 made its play and invited Colorado. They accepted, and then the the whole situation was on. And in about a 72-hour period, we had to look at options for ourselves here at Oklahoma. Other schools in the conference were doing the same thing. They had quite a few different moving parts to it, some of which had to occur to allow any of those options to exist. Unfortunately, some of those, or I guess fortunately, depending on which side of the issue you're on, they didn't all come together, and we really were faced with trying to make sure what we had would work and be viable, be strong. And it was. And it was tested with our partners. It was tested, you know, against the structure of the conference, and the 10 schools hung together. And as you said, Mick, we very well may be in an enviable position going forward, because we can think about whatever comes our way in terms of increasing that strength and value. We understand that there are a lot of people out there that are going to be naysayers and think this won't work in the long run. I don't think they know. I don't think anybody could sit on the other side and say, oh, this is going to be perfect. We are going to make what we have work, be successful, go forward.
What are the priorities from the athletic director's point of view? What do you start looking at as the basis for a conference's strength?
I like that question, because quite candidly, too much has been made of the monetary side of what held or broke people apart out of a conference versus the idea of a conference to begin with. The idea of a conference was to assemble teams with like missions academically that are in generally close proximity to each other, because it allows for the schools to develop the natural rivalries. I mean, this is from an athletics perspective. There's also perspectives related to academics, and as I mentioned, institutions that have similar missions, they have ways to work together and create benchmarks for each other. Sometimes there's cross-pollination in research and other ways of generating interest for recruiting students. Those kinds of things all work together. That's the idea of a conference, at least what it was initially. Now, all the immediate attention seems to be on how much money, you know, a team or a school can generate. And while we understand that's important in the overall model of sponsoring these athletics programs in today's world, we have to think about why we exist. You know, to say, hey, let's go to this league, let's go to that league, you know, it's easy for people to kind of fantasize of what that might be and think about new rivalries. But the fact of the matter is, when you are competing against teams that are in close geographical proximity to the institution that you love, I think it's great. And we have that in the Big 12, and have had that, you know, over the last several years. And look at all the natural rivalries that have developed over time, maybe even going back to the old Big 8 days that have existed and only got better through the Big 12. So whatever happens going forward, somewhere deep in there will be part of the definition of why a conference would either expand or realign or whatever might occur.
All I can judge by are the public statements that I happened to see about it at the time, but it seemed to me that President Boren was in favor of the Big 12 of staying together, as opposed to splitting off.
He was not only in favor, he was a strong leader in keeping the Big 12 together. However, you know, once the Big 12, as we know it, with the 12 institutions, started losing a school here and losing a school there, it opened up options for us to consider. So between the president and the board, they wanted to keep, you know, options open, think about what best positions the University of Oklahoma and its overall goals. And that's why, you know, reviewing what may have come our way through interactions with other conferences, you know, was important. At the end of the day, you know, we have the opportunity to think about strengthening the Big 12, even with the 10 teams. There's been a discussion that led us to believe that expansion at this point, maybe even reloading one or two teams, is not on our initial agenda. But, and I think that's the right place, by the way. But it doesn't mean that we'll foreclose any opportunity that may come our way down the road. I think, again, what we have to look at is how we remain viable in that national picture I mentioned, competitively, as well as how we can maintain or grow the value of this league. And I do believe in time it'll prove that we have a chance to think about something and get back to what made us successful, which was innovation, creativity, being more aggressive, not sitting back and worrying about we're vulnerable or we're at risk. That's not our personality of this league. We wouldn't have been the league that we were if we had been kind of that tepid sort of, you know, willy-nilly kind of wait and see what comes along group. That wasn't what we were. So I think this group now has a chance to be more proactive.
Will each sport view these changes individually, or will the North-South component as we know it disappear, or have decisions been made in all of those issues?
Decisions have not been made specifically, but the lean, if you will, is to sport by sport decisions. Quite candidly, I think one of the best parts that's going to take place is the elimination of North-South. I've never liked that. Going back to the other institution where I served before coming to Oklahoma, when we sat at the table and developed this league, I didn't like it. I understand for championship purposes we needed to have brackets, and it seemed to make sense because of schools being clustered together by geography. You know, it made sense to call it North-South. But right off the bat, it created sort of this connotation of divisiveness. And quite candidly, those schools that were characterized in the North were the traditional Big 8 schools, and 2 of the Big 8 schools were now with 4 of the schools that came from the Southwest Conference. And so when decisions were made where some people didn't like them, they used it as a convenient platform to say, well, in the South they do this, and then that was ridiculous. We were one conference. And then when we got forward and talking about the strength of certain sports, people like to bifurcate the league, you know, saying, well, the teams that are in one part aren't as strong as the teams in the other. That was ridiculous as well. So I'm glad we're getting away from North-South and get back to one league, more of a unified approach. And what we probably will see is either total round robins or double round robins in sports that makes sense. Football is an example. Most probably will go to playing 9 conference games, which gives you a true champion because every team will play each other.
Right.
There won't be any kind of perceived imbalance in the schedule because everybody has to play each other. Sometimes schools were playing Oklahoma and Texas, depending on how the rotation, and then other years they didn't play either one. So those things are gone away. And then in basketball, I think probably one of the sports that will be helped more than any because it's a double round robin now. Everybody sees everybody. I think it's probably a more fan-friendly type of approach. And so going forward, I think we have a chance to create a great deal of excitement and build upon what the conference has already done traditionally.
Joe Castiglione is the athletic director at Oklahoma. We'll be right back with more of The Verdict.
I'm Dr. Suzanne Van Kooten, a research hydrometeorologist at National Severe Storms Lab, and I'm a Chickasaw. There's a stewardship there, I think, that's within Native Americans and the protectionist of the land, and are we going to leave things better than when we came in, that came across in how I did my job. I had a true passion for it because I realized that this was what we had always done. We'd always been so involved with the land and taking care of the land, but also taking care of people. So that is truly the stream that you go down as a meteorologist. You want to protect lives and property. The Chickasaw Nation does an amazing job with our education programs. There are no excuses for you not to succeed as a Chickasaw in education. That's fundamental. That's fundamental to the success of the nation, is this education aspect, because knowledge literally is power.
What's your idea of security? A good-paying, sustainable job, a solid economy, less dependence on foreign energy? We can achieve it with the help of one industry, American oil and natural gas. It creates energy, jobs, and a strong economic base we can rely on. New technologies open vast reserves that will supply our energy needs far into the future. Because security, by every definition, is worth protecting.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers and our guest, University of Oklahoma Athletic Director Joe Castiglione. We talked before the break about some of the pending changes and how really hard decisions have not been made yet, but a lot of people are looking at the 2011 conference championship game in football and saying, is that going to take place? Or again, has that decision been made by the presidents and athletic directors?
Has not been made by the presidents and athletic directors. Probably will later this fall. Again, I think it's a lean toward doing away with the conference championship, but I think we all should let the whole situation play out and how these championships are developed, because there are little intricacies from one sport to the other. But again, I think what we talked in the first break, how we can build value, sustain value, interest, fan-friendly approach, that's what we're going to look at.
And one aspect of this I'll bring up before we move on to other aspects of what we brought Joe on to talk about is the fact that Oklahoma City and Tulsa, for that matter, kind of sit at the center of the Big 12 Conference. So in a very unusual way, Oklahoma City really could have found itself out to lunch if the Oklahoma or Oklahoma State had gone to a Pac-16 and really been at the periphery of a conference. But it seems like for the same reasons that Oklahoma and Oklahoma State can benefit from that close proximity of a conference, Oklahoma City benefits from trying to secure championships.
It definitely does. And Mick, you know from experience how aggressive Oklahoma City and now Tulsa, with the great facility development in that area, have been in trying to attract those championships, and I believe that they'll be even more aggressive going forward. And here just recently with Oklahoma City being awarded and rewarded, if you will, getting the College World Series softball championship, keeping it here in Oklahoma City was key.
Let's change direction here a little bit and talk about some of the other programs. Let's start off with talking about what's going on in the men's basketball program. I know they've had some staff shuffling and some players departing, and what's it look like?
Well, probably a year to forget. Last year. Certainly uncharacteristic for Oklahoma basketball, but within struggle you find ways to improve and to really focus on strengths. And I think with some realignment in the staff, also the recruiting that has been done, and you know what Coach Capel continues to do to be really in the forefront of recruiting. He's really done a good job in leading Oklahoma in that way, and has been recognized even by the NCAA and with his leadership skills and bringing them into to the areas that they're trying to work on and straighten out some of the issues that are taking place in college basketball. So Coach Capel has understood what needs to be done. We had things that have happened that I don't know that you maybe had the perfect storm in a bad way. But we've moved on from that. Really like the team that we have assembled, and we're in a position now to rebuild and go forward.
Better days ahead.
Oh, absolutely.
And
you know, just year before, 40 minutes from being from in the Final Four to having one of those years where we were very young, but the young players just never really gelled. And we're not here to be negative or lay the blame at anybody's feet. It just was a situation it was. We had to deal with it, put it behind us, and get better from it.
And the women's basketball program had a good year.
Really good. Back-to-back Final Four appearances. Very few teams ever in the country have achieved that. So they're in rarefied air now. And what Coach Sherry Cole has done in leading this program to consistent level of success is quite remarkable. And it's been recognized nationally by not just media, but the television partners. You see Oklahoma basketball on more and more of the national telecasts. And give Coach Cole credit, because it's not the easiest thing to do to take your team and say, we're going to play the best of the best, knowing that those teams may be a little further developed, particularly those that have won 7 and 8 national championships, and playing UConn and playing Tennessee and playing the powers that are out there, and now getting them to come to Norman, Oklahoma, or even Oklahoma City, where we had Tennessee 2 years ago. That's a remarkable accomplishment, but also, a real example of her leadership strength. And she just says, we're going to play the best of the best. It's going to make us better, and it has. And when our team sees that kind of competition early on, it plays right into our hands of being more prepared when we get to the NCAA tournament. And certainly, playing in the Big 12 Conference has been another way of preparing, because this league has led the nation in attendance each of the last 7 years. It's put many teams in the Final Four, and of course Baylor won a national championship a few years ago. So Oklahoma basketball under Sherry Cole is now among the nation's elite.
Run down, getting away from football and basketball, run down some of the other sports in this last year and how they achieved.
Maybe one of our best years ever. We had many teams finish in the top 10 and some in the top 5. We had gymnastics, best year ever, almost won the national championship. UCLA won it, but finished second. Men's gymnastics, finished third in the nation. They have, under Mark Williams, they have finished 1, 2, 3 in the nation every year he's been head coach. Not a bad record. Track and field, and the way it's developed in the NCAA, it actually serves as 3 sports: cross country, indoor track, and outdoor track. But our track and field program under Coach Martin Smith has grown immensely. First time ever top 10 for women. We won an indoor conference title, first time since 1960. In the cross country and the national championships, first time ever. You have wrestling top 5. You've got softball top 10. You've got baseball, went to the College World Series under Sonny Galloway. You've got several other programs that have been, in the NCAA tournament.
We only got about 30 seconds left in the show, but I want you to mention all the sports that you'd like to get in.
Well, volleyball, it's really everybody. Yeah. It's really great. Tennis went the first time ever, made it to the quarterfinals, and both teams in the NCAA tournament, volleyball in there. Golf, under our 2 new coaches that we announced last time we were on the air, much improved. So across the board, really good programs, and I think it's due to the fact that we have all our programs being successful, so we have a business model that can support that kind of approach.
Well, it's an amazing across-the-board season, and so good luck in this 2010-2011 calendar year.
Well, thank you very much.
Come back again.
And as always, we have a lot more to talk about.
That's right.
Joe Castiglione is the athletic director at the University of Oklahoma. Joe, great to have you back on again. Kent and I'll have a final word right after this.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information. And for almost 30 years, Oklahoma political, government, and business leaders have turned to the McCarville Report for accurate, reliable, inside information. Visit the McCarville Report online.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers. We're wrapping up a show in which we had Joe Castiglione, the athletic director at the University of Oklahoma. You know, I think it's easy to think that college athletics is all about football and television and money, and I think Joe kind of brought us back to earth there and talked about a lot of core values, that these are learning institutions. There's a lot of things to consider, not just those three things.
Well, and there are literally hundreds of other athletes down there that don't participate in that sport, in football, and are contributing greatly to the image of the university and to their own self-development. So it's a wonderful program.
And the state of Oklahoma has certainly benefited from its two institutions being in the Big 12. There's no question about that. Next week's show, we're going to have Dana Murphy.
Yes, Dana Murphy, newly re-elected Dana Murphy to the Corporation Commission.
All right.
We got a couple of websites here.
We do. Website information for more information on OU Athletics, Soonersports.com. Our website, theverdict.tv. For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. We'll see you next week on The Verdict.
The preceding program was produced exclusively for the Cox Channel.